Welcome to video number 46 in the Using iTrain tutorial series. My name is Bob. In this tutorial we look at part 2 of exercise 1 and see the steps needed to run the shuttle train with a direction change after each loop. Welcome back. So we now move on to the second train, which needs to be of the type shuttle. It should be capable of running in both directions around the layout. It should always stop at both stations, but should never use block 1. The wait duration in both stations should be between 10 to 15 seconds. And we want the shuttle train to randomly change direction 65% of the time it has completed the wait in station 1, but never change direction after the wait in station 2. And lastly, we will start the shuttle from station 1, block 2. So how do we approach this? Let's first consider the directions of the blocks. The shuttle needs to be able to travel in both directions around the layout, but it will never use B1. So all of the blocks, except perhaps B1, need to be bi-directional. B1 could remain unidirectional as it is at the moment, and that would not affect the operation of either train, the Intercity or the Shuttle. So it doesn't really matter if B1 is unidirectional, preferred direction or bi-directional. The choice for this block would depend on any other types of train that might be using the layout. We will leave it as unidirectional because we are not operating any other trains in this exercise. So we can make those block direction changes now. We right click on the block symbol, select Properties, and then in the Options tab we can go down to Direction and change that to bi-directional. Press OK, and then I will go away and repeat that for these 3 other blocks. Okay, so that is all the block directions set, and you can now see that in each of these blocks we have the bi-directional arrow showing and just one arrow in the unidirectional block. Next, we can look at the station settings. We will be running automatic routing without a route, so the way the trains behave will be dictated by the settings in each of the stations. Let's open the properties for station 1 by right-clicking within the dashed line of the station and selecting Properties. In the Train Types tab, we see that there are 2 entries in the table here, one for intercity trains and one for all train types. So what that is saying to us is that for intercity trains, these settings will be applied to those train types. And for all other types of trains, these settings will apply to them. We want to add another entry specifically for the shuttle type trains. To do that, we just click the append button, and then from the type menu we select the shuttle train. We always want the shuttle trains to wait in the station, so we ensure that the wait is ticked and the chance of a wait is set at 100%. We want to vary the time that it waits between 10 and 15 seconds, but whilst we are testing the operation of the shuttle, we will leave it at 1 second so that a wait is applied, but we're not having to wait the full duration of that wait period. We do, however, want the train to change direction after the wait has occurred, so we need to tick the direction change box here. We will eventually set the percentage chance of that direction change occurring to 65%. But again, whilst we're testing this layout and the operation, we will leave it at 100% so that a change of direction always occurs after the wait has completed in B2. The shuttle train itself has a control car at either end of the train, so it is inherently capable of travelling in either direction. We therefore don't need to force iTrain into making a change direction, so we can leave the force box unticked. If you had a steam train, for example, or any type of train that did not have a control car at either end of the train, you may then want to use the force tick box to force a change of direction in a train that inherently wouldn't be moving in the other direction. So now the station is set up so that shuttle trains will obey these settings, intercity trains will obey these settings, and all other train types will use the settings in the top line here. For the all train types entry, we can either leave it there with the wait ticked so that all other train types can wait in this station, or we could untick the wait so that all other train types can use the station to pass through but would not routinely stop and wait. Or we could completely remove the all types line like this by clicking on the remove button so that no other train types can use this station, and so they will not be able to wait or pass through it. We will leave it removed because we are only using the two train types in this exercise, and removing the all train types keeps things a bit simpler. So that's the train types tab. Now let's have a look at the blocks tab. The block selection method is set to in order. The first block in the list is B1. Our intercity train will simply be travelling around the layout from B1 to B4 and back and not changing direction. We haven't changed the setting yet, but the shuttle train will not be allowed into B1, so it will not be using it. Therefore, all traffic into B1 will only consist of the Intercity train, and it will always be travelling in direction next. So for block 1, we can leave the direction of the block at next. The Intercity needs to be able to wait at B1, so we need to have the wait ticked. But the Intercity will not always wait every time it goes into the station. Remember that for the Intercity we set a random chance of a wait occurring. So when a wait is not occurring, the train needs to be able to pass through B1. So we need to ensure that B1 is ticked to allow a pass through. All the trains that we are using do fit within the length of the block, so it's up to you if you want the length test performed or not. Okay, so now block B2. This is the block that the shuttle train will be using because it will not be allowed into B1. Like I said, we haven't set that up yet. We'll do that later. But it is essentially doing this. It is travelling from B2 around the circuit to B4, then maintaining the same direction through B4 and back to B2. After the wait, it will then do the same circuit but in the other direction, and this time it will be entering B2 from this direction, which is direction previous. So the shuttle needs to be able to enter B2 from both directions, and the setting that dictates whether a train is allowed to enter a block from a certain direction is the direction column here, and we need to set that to both directions, which we do down in this field here. So we click on that and set it to both. So for B1, trains will only be able to use B1 if they're entering in the direction next, and for B2, trains can use this station if they're entering the block in either direction. If we had left this as next for B2, iTrain would not allow the shuttles to travel in the direction previous, which is the anti-clockwise direction. So if you had any trouble with the shuttle not changing direction or not being able to travel in the anti-clockwise direction, then check that you have this set to both. Now the shuttle will always be stopping at B2 when it enters the station. So for the shuttle, it is not necessary to have the pass set, but there is no harm in leaving it set, and that way other trains can still use B2 to pass through. For example, if the Intercity was not able to use B1 for some reason, the Intercity would be able to use B2 or to pass through B2. Okay, so I think that is all the settings for station 1. So we need to press the OK button to save the settings and not to simply close the station down, because the settings would then not be saved. So click OK. Let's have a look at station 2. So right click in the station, select Properties. In the Blocks tab, everything is okay except that the direction also needs to be set to both to again allow the shuttle train to be able to enter this block and this station from both directions. The wait and the pass can both be left as ticked, and in the Train Types tab we have similar settings to station 1. So again we will add an entry for the shuttle, so we've got more control of the shuttle type trains. We want it always to wait 100% of the time, and just for more speedy testing we will set the wait times to 1 second and press return. We don't require the shuttle train to change direction, so we will leave that unticked for station 2. And to keep things simpler, we'll remove the other train types entry, because we will only be using these two on our little exercise here. So I think that is everything for station 2. So we click OK to save the changes. Now the other thing we need to remember to do is to prevent the shuttle train from using B1. There are different ways that we could achieve that. For example, we could use the Permissions tabs. If we go to the Edit and Train Types editor and select the shuttle type train, in the Permissions tab we have the table where we could append a new block, and the shuttle type trains would then not have access to this block. The block is chosen from the drop down menu here. And for our example, we would need to ensure that the shuttle train is not allowed to access block B1 from either direction, so both directions. If you click on this, double click on it, sorry, you see you have the choice of both, next and previous. In our example, it would need to be both. That would then prevent all shuttle type trains from accessing B1 from either direction. But we're not going to use that. We could use the train permissions. And in here, under permissions, for DBIC, the shuttle train, we could do the same here. We could append and add B1 as a block which this particular train would not then have access to B1 in both directions. But again, we will not choose that option. For our little setup here, there is another way, and perhaps a more elegant way. We are using an electric shuttle train, so it can only use track that is electrified. If we go to the block, right click on it and into Properties, within the Options tab we can untick the electrified checkbox. This block B1 would then not be electrified and the electric train would never be able to use it. This is perhaps a slightly better way of achieving the same end result because it is using capabilities that have been defined rather than simply blocking it. It just makes things a little easier to fault find later. So we will save those changes by clicking OK. Okay, good. So let's see how the shuttle performs. And we'll move it onto B2. So we will long left click and select Start from here. The route is reserved round to B4, which is correct, and we should always be getting a wait here, so let's just stop and start it a couple of times to see that a wait is always occurring, and yes it is, so that's good. Let's progress the train around into B4. And we should see a 1 second wait, which is good, yeah. And it's correctly choosing B2. So let's stop the route and check that if B2 is occupied, we can simulate that by making the feedback active there, which simulates this being occupied. Then if we click OK, we see that it is still trying to use B2 and not attempting to use B1. So good, that side of things appears to be working. So now we want to check that the shuttle train changes direction after it gets into B2 and completes the wait. So let's check that. So click the Start button, progress the train up into B2. When it gets to about 95 centimeters down here, we will see the wait occur, and we want to check to see if the direction changes, and it has not. So it should have changed direction and the arrow should have been pointing the other way and reserving a route around this way, but that did not happen. So why is that? We did set the properties so that a direction change is occurring for the shuttle. Yes, we have, and it is set at 100%, so every time the wait completes and finishes, it should be changing direction. So what is the problem? Let's think about the things that it could be. Well, the first thing we can check is whether the train can actually run in the anti-clockwise or in the previous direction. In other words, is this a direction related problem, or is it a change of direction problem? So we'll put the train in reverse gear and then press the start and see what happens. And it's reserved the route, and it looks as though the train will travel in the anti-clockwise or in the direction previous. It's coming into there and back into the station, and that appears to be okay, doesn't it? So let's see if it changes direction this time. Comes into the station, and no, it still has not changed direction. That still should have changed after the wait had finished. It should have changed direction and should now be travelling back this way. So the problem doesn't appear to be an issue of direction, but a change of direction when it is in this block. Okay, so what things are related to a change in direction? Well, let's have a look at the edit menu, and essentially all the things that are affecting this route will be in this section of the edit menu here. So it's going to be something related to all these, or one of these I should say. So let's just have a look at each of them and see if there is anything related to change of direction. So we're in the locomotive and we want to have the loco that is in the electric train selected, which is that one, DB101. Okay, so there's nothing related to that. Was the that's the speed tab, forwards and backwards. Well, it won't be our speed profile, will it? It won't be the functions, it won't be anything to do with configuration. What have we got in options? It's not the polarity. The view is set to both, so you can see from both directions in the cabin, so that is okay. This is all inertia, nothing in here about change of direction, nothing in permissions, so it doesn't appear to be loco. Let's have a look at wagons. Won't be anything to do with the wagons, will it? Nothing in here, no, related to change of direction. So trains, what about trains? So it's DBIC is the shuttle train, okay, not related to permissions. It won't be routes, we're not actually using a route. No options, nothing to do with functions, nothing direction related apart from which way the train is pointing and directed. So that's not a change of direction, so nothing there either. Okay, let's have a look at train types. Train types, we want the shuttle train. That is just the permissions for the block, which isn't a block that is in its path for the route, so it's nothing to do with that. And then in here, nothing that is change of direction related, so nothing to do with train types. It won't be a train routes. Let's have a look at blocks. We're not actually running any train routes, so it can't be that. Right, what about blocks? Let's have a look. So we've got in options, we've got gauge, we've got electrified, so all the blocks need to be electrified, so that's worth checking just to make sure all our blocks. No, it can't be that because we did travel in the clockwise and anti-clockwise direction, so it won't be anything to do with electrified. The blocks are bi-directional. Let's just check that. Bi-directional, 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 so nothing related to that. And then we've got Direction change forbidden. Now then, so what that is a direction change allowed to occur in that particular block? So the only block where we want a change of direction to occur is in B2, isn't it? The other blocks, the direction will be continuous through the block. Even if it stops in this block here, it will still maintain its direction of travel, so it won't be changing direction in the block for B4 or any of these other blocks. The only block where we want it to actually change direction after the wait has occurred is in B2. So let's have a look at B2 and look, direction change forbidden. So that is preventing the train from changing direction when the train is in this block. Let's untick that and see what happens. Now I should perhaps make it clear that this direction change forbidden option here is not normally ticked. It's not the default setting. The reason it is ticked was because we moved from the unidirectional setting for direction to bi-directional. Now when I go back to unidirectional, you see that the option here is grayed out, but you can see a tick is also there. And when you go from that to bi-directional, it automatically applies that tick in the box. If we had originally created this block as a bi-directional block, then that tick would not be there. So it's just something to be aware of. If you're changing the direction type, make sure that this is not ticked if you don't require it to be ticked. Click apply, close that down, and now let's press play again. Okay, speed is picked up. Double click, into B4. Yeah, up to here, into here. We want to see it come up to about 95, and then the wait will occur. We need to watch this. And yes, there we go. We have changed direction. So let's check that that occurs in the other direction. Coming into the block. And into B2. This time in the direction next. 70, 80, 90, bam, there we go. So that is what it was. It was the change of direction forbidden parameter that we needed to untick for B2. So great. I think we now have the train working correctly. Let's just stop. So what we should change next is in the station properties, we want to change the percentage chance of the change of direction, so that it doesn't change direction all the time. And we said we'd set it to 65%, I think. So we'll set that. We'll leave the wait at 1 second for the moment because we're still testing things. But what we can do to speed things up is we could set this station to pass through, so we're not having to wait for the trains to wait at this station here. So let's do a shift and click, which makes this grayed out. So now train should pass through there. Right, let's click the start. So what we're looking for, and here we go straight through the station, which has made that a bit quicker, hasn't it? So what we're looking for is a variation in change of direction. So we're going anti-clockwise at the moment. Wait for the wait, and okay, so it didn't change direction. That's good. And we want to see a change of direction. Let's come into the station. Okay, so no change of direction yet. Don't panic. It is 35% of the time it will not change direction. Into the station, and yeah, it's changed direction. So okay, so now we have some variation there, which is good. So the only thing left to do is to change the wait time from 10 to 15 seconds. Return, press OK. We can take this station back to where it normally would be with a wait in there. So I think everything is now set. Let's just give it one go as a fully configured scenario. Into the station, out through here, wait for the speed to pick up, double click on our feedbacks. So it comes into the station. Let's see whether it changes direction. The weight is varying, good. So that's something between 10 to 50. It's changed direction, excellent. And then it's coming back the other way. So there you go. I think we now have a complete working scenario, operating scenario for our shuttle train. So to quickly summarize, the key things we needed to do to allow the train to change direction were firstly to change the block directions. So in the block properties, we changed the direction from unidirectional to bidirectional for all of the blocks except for B1. We could have changed B1 to bidirectional as well, but that block is only being used by the Intercity train, which is always travelling clockwise in the direction of next. So we could have changed it, but there was no need to. So each of these 3 or 4 blocks here were changed to bidirectional. In the station properties, in the Blocks tab, we set the direction of B2 from next down here to both, so that trains that are entering this station or this block are allowed to enter the block from either direction. If we had left it at next, the trains would not have been able to enter the block in direction previous, so when travelling anti-clockwise. And we needed to do the same for B4 in station 2, so that was also set to both. In the Station Types tab for Station 1 only, we ticked the direction checkbox to instigate a change of direction after the wait has completed, and ensured that the change of direction percentage was something higher than 0% to ensure that the change of direction occurred. We did not need to do that for station 2 because we were not asking it to change direction in station 2. And in the block properties for B2, in the Options tab, we unticked this direction change forbidden parameter to allow a change of direction to occur when the train is in this particular block. And lastly, of course, we ensured that we were using a train that was capable of travelling in either direction. In the next tutorial, we will bring the Intercity back onto the layout and try running both trains together at the same time. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and please press the like button if you like what you saw. Bye for now.